Hi, this is John Camarianos. Welcome to a new edition of Capital Considered. It's been a minute. I don't think we've had a video since I came back from the island of Syros in Greece. But I wanted to highlight this time a few blog posts that I've done recently on the Mindful Advisory blog. The first one has to do with donor advised funds. The Wall Street Journal ran an article on them almost 2 weeks ago now, and I wrote about them. I don't want to get into the details, but there have been some changes to those funds, to how they're treated by the tax code, and what's required for you to donate to those funds. So those funds are where you donate money, you get the tax write-off, and then you can give it from the fund to a charity or charities of your choice. So the fund itself is kind of a middleman or an intermediate step to giving money to charity, but you do get the tax write-off immediately. And so there are some complaints about those funds that they allow investors to donate money to them, take the tax write-off, and then no one has a great incentive to get the money out of the fund and into a charity or charities. But again, just a couple of changes to what's required to donate to them. You can read the blog post. I'll put a link in the description for the details. The second item is inflation came in at 3.3%. In March. That's the number that came out most recently a few days ago in April. The number that comes out is always for the month before. Inflation ran at 3.3% on a year-over-year basis from March 2025 through March 2026. Undoubtedly, that has something to do with the rising price of oil, which feeds into so many other things in the economy, including, of course, gasoline at the pump, which is much higher than it used to be before the war with Iran started. Lots of complications, lots of confusion from the administration on whether the Strait of Hormuz is still open or not. It seems an announcement was made that it was open on Friday by the administration, and now on Saturday, as we record, there are reports of ships being fired on. So it does not seem as if the Strait of Hormuz is open in any meaningful way. So inflation, we wrote about that, and we wrote about tips again. We're probably speaking about tips ad nauseum, but I think tips can be a good way for many investors to get some inflation protection. U.S. Treasury bonds, that's what tips are, whose prices are tied and whose coupons in some sense are tied to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. That's the most famous inflation number. There are complaints that the Consumer Price Index does not track inflation properly. There are fears that the U.S. government will default on its debt. But all of those things taken into consideration, it still seems to me as if tips are a decent deal in for certain investors in certain accounts, namely retirement or tax sheltered, tax advantaged accounts. Next item, the New Jersey tax code has some quirks in it. I've looked at the websites of some accountants who practice in New Jersey, and I'm not convinced that even they know about these quirks. Contributions to a SEP-IRA are not tax deductible by my reading of the statutes at the New Jersey level. So if you contribute money to a SEP-IRA, it'll lower your income for federal tax purposes, but not for New Jersey state tax purposes. Also, as a result of that, when you withdraw money, when you distribute money from a SEP-IRA, the contributions are tax-free then at the state level because you have already paid tax on them with the contribution. You should read the blog post where I look at the statute, but you should also always check with an accountant on these matters. It may be, however, that if you're self-employed and you contribute to a SEP, it could be more advantageous to contribute to a self-administered 401k if you're a high earner especially. So the last item on our list, our friend at MarketWatch, Brett Ahrens, wrote an article citing a paper from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, which suggests a reform to Social Security, mainly that single retirees have their Social Security capped at $50,000, and couples have it capped at $100,000 per year. Over time, because Social Security has inflation adjustments, that could harm a greater number of people than it would initially if that's implemented. It seems like there's going to be some kind of reform within the next 6 or 7 years. No one knows what it might be, but this is one proposal that our friend Brett Aarons highlighted over at Market Watch. And again, we have a blog post about this, and you can read more details about it. It reminded me that in 2011, again in the state of New Jersey, where we are located, the COLA, the cost of living adjustment for state employee pensions, so policemen, firemen, people who work for the state and local governments, the COLA adjustments, the cost of living adjustments, were suspended in 2011. Newly elected Governor Mikey Sherrill has reaffirmed those suspensions. So perhaps they didn't hurt initially because inflation was pretty low in the years after 2011, but it's not so low anymore. It's not inordinately high, although it was in 2022. But it's not so low anymore either at 3.3%. And it's important for investors who are reliant on Social Security, and if you live in New Jersey, on a New Jersey state pension, to do other things with other capital to try to keep up with inflation. That could mean investing in stocks. It could mean investing in foreign stocks, which look cheaper than U.S. stocks. It could mean investing in the stocks of commodity producers, including oil companies, but not strictly oil companies, other companies associated with commodity production of one kind or another. So that's the other blog post that I wanted to highlight. We'll have more videos in the future, I think. It took me a while to get into the swing of it after my sojourn in the Mediterranean. So this is John Camariano signing off for Capital Considered. Thanks for watching.
No information on this podcast should be construed as investment, tax, or legal advice. This podcast is not an offer for advisory services or to buy or sell securities. Before making any financial decisions, consult with a qualified professional advisor who can assess your individual needs and circumstances. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and all investments carry risks, including the potential loss of principal. Securities discussed in this podcast may be holdings of the host or his clients.